There's something oddly specific about the beginning progression of the planche that I like to define as the beginner barrier. This is the region, specifically with the tuck planche, where you're trying to go from the tuck planche to the advanced tuck. And if you have like a foundation of around 20 seconds tuck planche, and you can barely even hold like a 1 to 2 second advanced tuck, this is the plateau, or at least the barrier that I try to articulate. I've been thinking about this for a very, very long time. So the very first time I actually got into planche, I built my tuck planche up to a 15-second hold, and as soon as I tried leaning a bit further, I just could not do the advanced tuck. I just kept collapsing, and I literally could not. I just didn't have the shoulder strength for that demand. Now I just kept asking and questioning, why the hell was I not progressing? Like, I was always doing tuck planche movements, I was doing the holds. My holds and durations were increasing, but that just didn't seem to strengthen my muscular potential. Rather, it probably did more justice to my muscular endurance, and it simply just got me better at the tuck planche. Now, something that Mantis Calisthenics has mentioned quite a bit was the leaning and intensity demand of the planche is one of the most essential things that is required for progression. The variations of planche, they all differ in leaning. They differ in the amount, the angle that you lean in, and the changes in leverages. You're putting more emphasis and load on your front delts, which you can't gain from simply just doing tuck planche holds. I feel like when you do tuck planche, you can do a bit of it, start off with it, because it helps with the motivational factor. It makes you, I guess it gives you that foundational the reassurance that you're slowly building up to the planche. But if you aren't seeing any improvement from your tuck planche towards the advanced tuck, then you just got to drop them. You just got to not focus on the tuck planche at all. And what you need to focus on is planche leans. You start to realize that planche leans, the more you get into the planche progression and the more you progress, the more you really start to love the planche leans. They seem very basic and simple in its manner. All you're doing is just leaning in a straight position, right? So if that's the case, then what more are you getting out of it? You're just leaning. That's what I used to think, but over time I realized that what you are changing is the intensity and the demand in strength towards your shoulders. So as you begin to lean further, you are acquiring a greater level of specificity towards the planche. Now, if you are not focusing on intensity, well, I always advocate for intensity. So if you're not focusing on this, then you're not going to be seeing any progression whatsoever. So when I think about this beginner barrier that is the tuck planche, I almost question the integrity of its significance. Like, are tuck planches even all that important for your planche progression? And I've come to the conclusion that probably not. I don't think it's really all that effective physically. I guess in terms of a mentality break, it certainly gives you that reassurance that you are progressing, and you can kind of use it as like a leverage point, or at least a reference to see how well you're improving. But if you're using the duration of your tuck planche as a reference point, then I don't think you're giving your progression any form of justice. If you just increase the hold and your duration of the tuck planche, you're only increasing your endurance. You're only getting better at the tuck planche. And the way I used to compare this to my old progression was, for me to get to tuck planche advanced tuck, it actually took me about a year, I think. A year of experimenting, frustration, and plateauing, and going back into the tuck planche with a whole new mindset. I think what really changed me was I took a break from planche training for like 8 months. And when I got back to it, I had a whole new mindset. I think when I got into it with a fresh start and a new page to work with, there was differences. I started experimenting, my old habits disappeared, and what I was focusing on was balancing and leaning more. What an unusual thing that I've always mentioned was, when I did, my training hardly consisted of any like planche push-ups, like no pseudo push-ups, handstand push-ups, or any of those bent arm dynamics. I only focused on straight arm work, and nearly the majority of my sessions were just me trying to lean as fast as possible from that taco planche position. And I just kept doing that, and somehow I improved. But I hit a regression point and a plateau, and I realized that's when I started, I guess that demanded the need for more dynamic bent arm work and general conditioning. So, by considering my beginning phase, what really helped, again, is planche leans. You need to understand that if you're not working with leaning or any form of dynamic work that does not vary your leverage points, then you are in a territory of plateau. So I think an advice from my future self towards my former self is work with variation, like diversify your work, like your workouts. Use resistance bands and do a lot of planche leans. They can get boring, they can get very autonomous, but you just got to stick with it. You got to use how far you lean as a form of progression. The further you lean, the more you are able to, or at least it demonstrates a greater strength potential, right? So the further you lean, the closer you are at getting towards the planche. So once you work on that for a solid period of time, I think another way to, prime your mentality and at least give you some fresh start is go from there and then start to attempt those advanced tuck or those furthest lean possible planches. By doing that, you're slowly getting used to the neurological understanding of the planche, and it kind of gives you a reference point and like a point of motivation, because it kind of shows you, oh, I am improving or progressing in some manner. But don't rely on motivation. You've got to really, if you really want to get into the planche and invest all your time into it, you got to be disciplined and just trust the process. This is something I'm still trying to reconcile with. I'm still trying to understand and like give myself the time to just trust the process. I'm slowly getting there, and I think I started this year pretty strong with a mindset knowing that with time I'm going to get there eventually. So yeah, that's basically it, and I'll finish it off here.